All right, we're going deep today. Strap in because things are getting really, really tense. We're talking Israel directly attacking Iran
Yeah.
for the first time ever. This is a whole new ballgame, and we've got all these live updates coming in from Al Jazeera. But this isn't going to be your typical, news summary,
No, not at all. You're right.
We're going way beyond that.
This has the potential to be huge, honestly. Global consequences. It's hard to wrap your head around it.
I know, right? And it's not just the facts of what happened either. Al Jazeera is really capturing how people are reacting.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, the anxiety.
You can feel it.
Yeah. It's like we're right there with them as history is being made. But we're going even deeper than that today, right? Uncovering the stories behind the headlines.
Exactly. The human side of it all.
Yeah.
The details that get lost in the chaos, it's important.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. Israel launching airstrikes on Iran. I mean, it's almost unthinkable what pushed things this far, what even led to this.
Well, Israel's saying this is payback, basically. Months of attacks from Iran, they say, or groups backed by Iran.
So they're claiming they had to do it?
Yeah, defensive move. But it's a huge escalation.
Huge. And Iran's confirming 2 of their soldiers were killed in these strikes? Multiple bases hit, too.
Across different provinces, yeah.
This is unlike anything we've ever seen before.
It is. This isn't just another flare-up. It's Israel directly engaging with Iran on Iranian soil. Publicly acknowledged, too. This changes everything.
Okay, but how so? I mean, haven't they always been kind of at odds, though?
Oh, definitely. But there's always been this unspoken rule, this kind of shadow war where they avoid a direct confrontation. This blows that apart. It's a domino effect, potentially. Each move leads to another, and it just keeps getting worse.
Chills, literally. And then you've got Hezbollah jumping into all this.
Right into the mix.
It's like everyone wants in on this now, and that's terrifying.
Hezbollah is claiming responsibility for a rocket attack.
Oh, wow.
A barrage, they're calling it a rocket salvo, aimed at Israel's Tel Nof air base.
Hold on, why that base specifically?
Well, it's no accident. Tel Nof is basically the heart of Israeli intelligence. Satellite stuff, electronic warfare, the works. Hitting that base sends a very specific message.
It's like they're showing what they're capable of.
Exactly. It's not just symbolic anymore.
So each action is pulling more players in. The stakes just keep getting higher. And all this while the situation in Gaza and Lebanon just keeps getting worse.
It's a humanitarian disaster. The UN is calling it atrocity crimes now, which is just awful to hear.
Yeah, you never want to hear those words.
Over 42,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza since last October.
It's unbelievable.
And that's just the deaths. Over 100,000 wounded. And then you've got Lebanon, Friday's attacks alone, 41 dead, 133 injured.
Those are real people. Mothers, fathers, children.
It's hard to grasp the scale of it.
It is. It really is.
And then, in the middle of all this, you've got Kamal Edwan Hospital, one of the few that's still working in northern Gaza.
Yeah, and then Israeli forces just storm in there.
They detained all the male medical staff and left the patients just completely vulnerable.
Imagine being a patient there. It's like on top of everything else, now you're caught in this too.
And targeting medical facilities like that, it could be a war crime. It's a clear violation.
Yeah, there's no justification for that. And by detaining the medical staff, it makes the healthcare crisis in Gaza even worse.
It's already a dire situation.
Then there's Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, the director of that hospital. His 8-year-old son was killed in the Israeli attack. Can you imagine trying to save lives, leading a hospital while dealing with that kind of loss?
It's heartbreaking. It's a reminder of the human cost behind all of this.
That's what we can't forget, and that's why hearing from people on the ground is so important.
Absolutely. The ICRC, they're saying the situation in northern Gaza is extremely dire. They're trying to get aid in, evacuate civilians. It's just a mess.
And then you have Dr. Mance Gilbert, who's worked in Gaza and Lebanon for years. He's really condemning the West for, not doing enough. He's saying they're turning a blind eye.
Then you've got Bassem Naim, a Hamas official. He's going even further, saying that Israel is only doing this because they feel protected by the West.
So he's saying the West is complicit, basically.
Yeah, it adds a whole other layer to this. And all these voices from the ground, they're painting a very different picture.
It's like a feeling of being abandoned, ignored.
Absolutely. And that's really different from the official statements and diplomacy we're seeing on the international level.
Speaking of which, we've got condemnations pouring in. Bahrain, Algeria, Tunisia, even Russia's spoken out against Israel. But will it actually do anything?
That's the big question. Is this just talk, or will it lead to real change? Diplomatic pressure is one of the few things that might work here.
Yeah, because otherwise, who knows what'll happen. And what about inside Israel itself? How are people reacting to all this?
It's a mixed bag. There's a lot of fear, obviously, but also confidence in their military. But there's also division.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The opposition leader is criticizing the strikes, saying they missed key targets, questioning if they were even worth it.
So even with this threat, there's disagreement on how to handle it.
There always is.
Man, it's just so much more complex than it seems on the surface.
It always is. And with emotions running so high, who knows what'll happen next? It's really unpredictable.
Yeah.
It really is like a chain reaction, each event leading to the next.
And the stakes are just enormous.
You said it. The Middle East has always been volatile, but this is something else entirely.
It's like it's always been there simmering under the surface, and now it's boiling over. And it's not like this just came out of nowhere either. There's so much history here.
So much history. It's a tangled mess, going back decades, decades of animosity, broken promises.
It's hard to even know where to begin.
It is, yeah. So many threads, all connected, representing years and years of conflict.
Fighting over land, resources.
Mistrust, deep grievances.
Yeah, and that's what makes this so hard to understand. It's not like one side is good and one side is bad. It's so much more complicated than that.
Way more. There's no easy answer here. It's a clash of narratives.
Of different ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. Ideologies, deeply held beliefs.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's playing out in the most tragic way possible.
Yeah, with real people suffering.
Thousands of lives lost, families destroyed, entire communities just wiped out. It's almost impossible to grasp the scale of it.
And it's a reminder that while we're sitting here analyzing things from a distance, this is real life for the people caught in the middle. Their stories, their pain, that's what matters.
Absolutely. And the situation is constantly changing too.
Yeah, like what we know now could be totally different tomorrow.
Exactly. That's the fog of war. It's really hard to get a clear picture of what's happening, and misinformation spreads so easily.
So we have to be careful about what we believe.
Very careful.
We're being bombarded with information, and not all of it's true.
Definitely not. We have to think critically, question what we see and hear.
And look for different perspectives.
Absolutely. Don't fall into the trap of thinking it's black and white, good versus evil. It's way more complicated than that.
It really is. You know, it all boils down to one question. Can this cycle of violence ever be broken? Can there ever be peace in this region?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a question that's been asked for generations, and there's no easy answer.
No, there isn't.
It's going to take a fundamental shift in mindsets, a willingness to compromise, to see the other side's point of view,
to understand their pain,
to acknowledge the suffering on all sides. But that's incredibly difficult.
It is, especially with all the hatred, the mistrust built up over decades.
And the political pressure. Leaders are often afraid to make concessions. They're worried about looking weak.
So is there even any hope? It feels so overwhelming.
It's easy to lose hope, yeah. To feel like nothing can change. But even in the darkest times, we can't give up on it.
Hope for what, though?
Hope for dialogue, for reconciliation. Hope for a future where violence isn't the answer.
It sounds almost impossible.
It is incredibly difficult. But that makes it even more important to hold on to that hope.
Okay, but what can we actually do? I mean, we're just individuals. This conflict seems so much bigger than us.
It's easy to feel powerless, I know. But every little bit helps. Even small acts of kindness and understanding can make a difference.
What do you mean?
It's about challenging prejudices, talking to people who have different views. It's about supporting organizations that are working for peace.
So like starting conversations, donating to charities.
Exactly. It starts with each of us in our own communities.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the diplomats working behind the scenes.
The unsung heroes. They're trying to de-escalate things, prevent a full-blown regional war.
And that must be so hard.
It is. It's a delicate process full of setbacks. But it's absolutely essential.
Because the alternative doesn't bear thinking about. A full-scale war would be a humanitarian catastrophe.
Millions displaced, economies destroyed.
A whole generation traumatized.
It would be a disaster.
Right.
So we have to support these diplomatic efforts, even if they seem fragile.
Yeah, we have to try. Okay, so looking ahead, what are the possible scenarios? Could this actually end peacefully?
Honestly, it's impossible to say for sure, but there's always a chance.
A chance for what?
For peace. It's a long shot. But maybe international pressure, combined with pressure from within Iran and Israel themselves, could force them to negotiate.
Negotiate what, though? What would a peace deal even look like?
Well, it would require both sides to make concessions, to give up some of their demands.
And that's hard.
Very hard, because it means acknowledging the other side's point of view, admitting that maybe you're not entirely right.
And that takes courage.
It does. And it's risky, politically. Leaders could be accused of being weak, of giving in.
So what if they don't? What if those efforts fail? What's the worst case scenario?
The worst case is that this escalates even further, pulls in more countries.
And then we have a regional war.
A full-blown conflict, yeah.
Yeah.
That could destabilize the entire Middle East.
And who knows what the consequences of that would be?
It doesn't bear thinking about. It would be a nightmare for everyone involved.
So we're at this crossroads with so much uncertainty.
And so much at stake.
And it feels like anything could happen.
It really does. And we have to be prepared for that. But we also have to remember that history is full of surprises.
Like good surprises.
Sometimes, yeah. Conflicts that seemed unsolvable suddenly find a resolution.
So there's always hope.
There's always hope. We can't give up on that. But hope isn't enough on its own.
So what else do we need?
We need informed action. We need people to speak up, to demand peace. And we need to remember that this isn't just a story we're following. This is real life with real consequences.
It is. And those consequences could be devastating.
They could. This is a critical moment for the Middle East and for the world. And the decisions made in the coming days and weeks will have a profound impact on everyone.
It's like we're holding our breath, waiting to see what happens next. It's easy to feel like, what can we even do? It's so big, you know?
I get it. It's overwhelming. But remember, even small actions add up.
Yeah, but how?
Well, we can stay informed. We can challenge the hate and the division. Support those working for peace. It all makes a difference.
You know, it's like that saying, hope is not a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Something about an axe, right?
Yeah. Hope with an axe you break down doors with. It's about taking action.
Okay, so what about those diplomats you mentioned? What are they actually doing?
It's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. Back-channel talks, mediation.
Sounds complicated.
Oh, it is. It's a slow process, lots of setbacks.
I bet.
But they're trying to find common ground, get people talking.
It's like trying to put out a fire with a garden hose, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And there are so many different players involved, too. It's not just two sides.
Right. Everyone's got their own interests.
It makes it even harder. So, okay, let's talk scenarios. What could happen?
Is peace even possible?
It's a long shot, but maybe with enough pressure, Iran and Israel could be forced to negotiate.
Forced?
Well, pressured maybe. From the international community, but also from within their own countries.
What would that even look like, though? What kind of deal could they make?
It would have to involve compromises from both sides.
Yeah.
They'd have to give up some of their demands, recognize the other side's concerns.
That's got to be tough, though, right? Like admitting you're not totally right.
Extremely tough. It takes a lot of courage.
And political risk.
Big time. Leaders could be seen as weak, betraying their people.
So what if they don't compromise? What if it all falls apart?
They were looking at a much worse situation.
Like a full-blown war.
Potentially.
Yeah.
It could spread throughout the region.
Yeah.
The consequences would be catastrophic.
Right.
Millions displaced, economies ruined, entire countries destabilized.
It doesn't even bear thinking about.
No, it doesn't. Which is why we have to keep pushing for peace.
Keep hoping.
And working towards it. Okay, but there's another factor here, too.
What's that?
Technology. Think AI, cyber warfare.
Mm.
It's changing everything.
Oh, right?
We're already seeing cyber attacks in this conflict, targeting infrastructure and stuff.
So it can make things even worse.
Yeah. Imagine autonomous weapons, drone swarms, all controlled by algorithms.
It's like something out of a movie.
Except it's real. And there are ethical questions, too, like who's responsible if an AI kills someone?
That's a good point.
And what if those systems get hacked? It's a huge risk.
But couldn't technology also be used for good, though?
Absolutely. Think about communication platforms, connecting people across borders.
Right.
AI could help monitor ceasefires, detect violations. It could even help build trust.
So technology is a tool.
It can be used for good or for bad.
It's up to us to decide how we use it.
Exactly. It's a choice we have to make. And the choices we make now will have huge consequences.
For everyone, everywhere.
This isn't just about the Middle East. It's about the whole world.
So as we wrap up, I just want to say this has been a heavy, deep dive.
Yeah.
But it's important.
It is.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is we can't forget about the human side of this.
The people caught in the middle, the lives lost, the families torn apart. That's the real tragedy of this conflict.
It is. And we can't let ourselves become numb to it.
We have to remember those human stories. It's what will drive us to find a better way.
A way towards peace.
Exactly.
Thank you for listening, and we urge you to stay informed, stay engaged.
Don't give up hope.
There's always hope for a better future.